Another day, another story, and today we are focusing on the sky, on the sun, the moon, and stars. Story time with Sun Peace. When I was very little, and indeed very young, back in ye old 1900s, my mother read me a collection of stories telling of the Greek constellations. The book first showed an illustration of a constellation, and then told the backstory of said configuration of stars. How that picture came to be. The backstory ranged from longing lovers cast up in the sky for their protection, to heroes and beasts locked in battle, or hunters out on an eternal chase. They were snapshots, important moments in time, frozen and saved, lessons to be learned, or information that needed to be shared. I can't claim to remember very much of the actual stories, yet I still remember that feeling that the sky above me was this giant ancient storybook covering the entire world, telling each and every one of us of people, events, and happenings that would otherwise have been lost to time. That way of viewing the world wasn't just the musings of a sweet little 4 to 5-year-old, but an actual concept spanning over 6,000 years back in time, to Mesopotamia. This way of viewing the night sky as some sort of holy scripture can be traced by our ancient tablets to Mesopotamia. A region known for its prosperity and interest in literature, mathematics, and of course, astronomy. Whether seen through Greek or Mesopotamian eyes, the stars and the other heavenly bodies gave life lessons and advice, depending on the constellations visible in the sky. Specific tasks needed to be done, like sowing or harvesting. While the sagas are different and part of their own cultural context, they do suggest that people knew of the significance of the heavenly bodies, whether constellations or the sun and moon. People knew that there was a connection between life on Earth and the movements in the sky. In the last episode, we spoke of a possible Bronze Age belief and mythology, of a story that seems to unfold over a series of Bronze Age artifacts and petroglyphs. I read to you my version of a tale of the sun's journey across the sky, from sunrise to sunset. A story with a later counterpart written down by Snorri Sturluson during the 1200s. In that episode, I promised you to record a retelling of that story as well. And well, record I did, or am. All grammar aside, hear it you shall. As always, I want to stretch that I do take a fair bit of creative liberty with these stories. I will try to end this episode with a little discussion of the source material. Now, enjoy the story. The old world and the new. Have you ever wondered why the sun seems to be in such a rush to get across the sky? Running as if fleeing in fright, making our days fly by. Perhaps have you cursed and muttered while shaking your fists at the dark grey clouds that sometimes seem to chase it? Or maybe you have wondered why those same grey clouds can make the hairs on your neck stand, and your mood turn sour, even when neither rain nor thunder follow in the wake of said clouds. Might those ominous clouds be the memory of something more sinister? Is the sun's rapid descent from summit an actual flight? Do they tell us something of a long-gone past? I'm sure that if you knew the reason, what old shadows still paint the earth and sky, like the ghost of an old battlefield, I'm sure you would feel great sympathy for the sun. The shadows of the past tell of a chase of life and death, of shimmering steeds and fierce beasts. A story of how the first world ended and a new was born. The origin of the first world and how it came to be is bloody and bizarre, built out of death and sacrifice. The sons of Bor were three: Odin, who later became the Allfather of all gods, Willi, the willful, and Vi, the holy. At the beginning of the world, the brothers slew a mighty giant and fashioned the universe out of his remains. Over the earth and its landscape, they hung the giant's skull as a canopy. The body of the giant was the scenery, the stage, but a production is never complete without players, props, and good lighting. The world would stand forever still if there was no night and day, actors that control the change of time and drive the play forward. To keep night and day on cue, Odin, the Allfather, ordered a mother and her son to ride across the sky, to act as night and day, riding in shifts, constantly alternating but never meeting, in a never-ending game of tag. The mother was Night, the dark-skinned daughter of the Narfi. As suited someone of her beauty and grace, Night had many partners, with whom she had many children. She birthed Earth, the personification and protector of earth and land, as well as sun and moon, tasked with overseeing the heavenly disk's journey across the sky. With Dayspring, the fair, she bore a son called Day, named after his father. Day was his mother's contrast, as fair as she was inky black, as radiant and bright as his mother was a dark velvet. Everything on earth or in the sky needs a spirit and a guide. So did the shift of night and day. Alone, they did not know of their place. The Allfather therefore ordered the mother and son into service. He tasked them to ride across the sky in half-day shifts. From the doors of the netherworld in the east to the doors in the west, first the mother, then the son. When one arrived, the other was to depart. They needn't carry out their quest on foot. To aid them in their task, Day was given a horse named Sheenmane, and Night was gifted Frostymane. With her children, Day, Sun, and Moon, she helped men keep the time, so they could determine when it was time to sow or harvest, when there was time to work or rest. Without night and day, there would be no order, and without order, there would be no life. At the end of the world, the twilight of the gods, the sun will be darkened, the stars will vanish, the world will sink into the sea, and a new age will dawn as it re-emerges. And as it always has, day will follow night. The sun and her brother moon. Long ago, when the world was different, in a time when the roots of the world tree Yggdrasil nourished 3 parallel kingdoms, Asgard, the kingdom of the gods, Midgard, home to the humans, and Outgard, also known as Jotunheim, the homestead of giants. In this time, 2 children were born, a girl with golden locks and a boy with hair of silver. Their father was Mundilfari. Their mother was Night. Night was mother to many children, but none elevated her own features so. Much like her half-brother Day, the daughter was a warm golden radiant, a stark contrast to the mother. And the son complemented the mother's velvet darkness with a cold silver sheen. As a family, they were striking. So touched by his children's beauty, Mundilfari named them Sun and Moon. This did not sit well with the gods. Incensed over the father's audacity, the gods intervened. Yes, the children were touched by good looks, but to name them after the divine heavenly bodies were treason. The Allfather ordered the children to duty. They were set up high in the heavens, each given a task. Sun, the daughter, was caused to drive the horse that drew the golden chariot, carrying the sun. The golden disk that was fashioned for the world's illumination, made out of the glowing matter which flew out of Muspelheim, the realm of fire and flame. The son and brother, Moon, was set to steer the moon's course. He too held the reins of 2 horses, strong steeds pulling the chariot of the moon. It may sound like easy tasks, perhaps even needless. Why would the heavenly bodies need such guides? And why would they need to travel at such a speed? In the east of Midgard, in Ironwood, the brothers and sisters of Fenrir are born. From this place stemmed two wolves, also cast up in the heavenly vault. They seek to swallow the sun and moon, and doom the world by ending all light and stopping the cycles of the moon. The wolf called Skull runs after the sun. She fears him greatly, and she hastes her course, 'cause she fears her own destruction. Ever closer he comes, and one day he shall get her. Sun knows that her struggle is a struggle with a set ending. Still, she perseveres. Hati is the name of the wolf that leapt over the sun, eager to seize the moon. It was said by the old and the wise that the first world would come to an end, but with the death of the first, a second world would rise. After the world ends in Ragnarök, a new sun will illuminate the sky. A daughter bright, Alfrotun, sun will bear. After the mother is snatched, the daughter will tread the mother's path. That is the memory, the tragic past, that still is mirrored on our heavenly canvas. The daughter inherited the mother's task, the course and pace already set. A girl wearing her mother's shoes, a path she never chose. Her only teacher, a mother consumed by fear. When a dark cloud approaches, she does as her mother did and flees. With time, we humans did forget all about the old world and its laws and customs. Instead, we look to the sky and we curse and shake our fists. To piece together the outlines of this story, I had to do a bit of research and do a fair bit of puzzling. I used several ballads and poems to get a full narrative from birth to death of all the characters. Mainly, I took passages from the ballad of Vafthrûdnir, the beguiling of Gylfi, as well as the ballad of Grimnir and Sibyl's prophecy. I ended up reading both English and Swedish translations, as I found many discrepancies from how I heard the story read before. Different translations and interpretations use different names, or translate or interpret passages or events a tad differently. I have also noticed that many retellings in blogs, videos, and other self-published platforms tend to alter the gender of sun and moon, or at times even make sun and moon synonymous with day and night. In a sadly not too far away, more pretentious past, this used to bug me. It made me feel like the story wasn't told right, or that it made me unsure which version was right. Now I know better. First off, it's bloody hard work reading through the old translations. And confusing too. The same character can have several names or kennings. For example, the sun is also referred to by the name of her chariot. The story is made extra complex since the sun and moon are different entities from the siblings sun and moon, but aren't always treated as such. Shortly put, it's a real mess of who's who while reading. Second, stories are organic, and they change depending on the teller. These stories were written down centuries after they were first told. Like many scholars point out, the Bronze Age story of the sun's journey, aided by ship, snake and horse, and the journey of the sun, as told in the Eddas, should be seen as separate traditions, as should our contemporary tellings and readings of these stories. The true origin of these stories have been lost in time. They have since been handled and retold many times by many generations. Each time they are charged with a new meaning and a new intent. This is how cultural expression survives, by evolving. In a greater perspective, one can argue that this is how we as a species have survived as well. Taking that already exists and adapting it, and later passing on the knowledge, and letting future generations do the same. Show them this is what we have, this is how we do it, and then let them do their thing. And Sturluson wrote down the stories. The Nordic region was christened. Furthermore, the Viking Age ended in about year 1066 CE, and the stories were collected and written down during the 1200s. The old religions had ended, their mythologies passed off as just stories, legends belonging to a more primitive era. They later became romanticized by some and intellectualized and analyzed by others. From a scholarly point of view, the Eddas can't be used as a source depicting Iron Age life. Still, they can still be a source regarding the medieval period's view of the ancient, but mainly as a source for understanding medieval values, wants, and fears. The point that I want to get to, as we touched upon in the last episode, is that stories are powerful and always a product of their time. In ethnology, anthropology, and to a lesser extent, in archaeology, it is taken for granted that storytelling in all forms, jokes, myths, or cautionary tales, facts or fiction, is how we own and make sense of the world around us, how we can control it. To control a story is to gain social influence. We can shape other people's understanding, evoke feelings, or even set a new truth. According to Karen Armstrong, author of A Short History of Myth, we have been myth makers as long as we have been humans, and it is how we bring order and control to chaos. With stories, we feel that we can meet and interact with the world around us in a meaningful and safe way. Ethnologists like Bengt af Klintberg will tell you that urban legends mirror the fears and anxieties of the people who start and spread them. His fieldmate, fellow ethnologist Ulf Palmenfeld, could tell you how we use jokes and tricks to test the waters of what is acceptable or taboo. The story tells quite a lot about the teller. So what does these stories of gods and goddesses say about the world? It's been claimed repeatedly in talks about Greek mythology that the gods are rarely pure and loving. They have many vices, and many stories are cruel and violent. The same can be said about the Norse gods. The tales are full of trickery, drinking, infidelity, and blood spilled, of family intrigues, so bizarre or so traumatic that they could make any telenovela or soap opera seem tame and unimaginative, or so bloody and exploitative that they would make Quentin Tarantino himself go, "That's a bit much." They seem to say that there is a duality and a risk with everything in life, even within ourselves. Nothing is ever fully black and white. Stories can be a blank canvas, a security blanket, a playing field, a shield, and a theater, all in one. When I started working on my story for this episode, I had a very clear idea. 2 children tossed up into the sky. They act as guides. They drive chariots, have horses. Some big wolves are chasing them. Done. Story told. Though I used the exact source material, even including more of the authentic background, more of the exact words taken from the original source, my narrative changed. The tone of the story changed. And what the story means to me changed. While working on this, I also got back to working on my family tree, pulling some of the threads that I was told long ago never to pull, as what I learned from pulling those threads sunk in. And I worked on this story. Night came to play a more significant part, as did Ragnarök and Sun's daughter. It went from a story about sun and moon and how they went from one place to another, to a story of transgenerational trauma, of being picked up and placed somewhere new, on somebody else's whim, about pressure and the futility of some efforts. So what can these stories say about us humans? If stories are mirrors of human mentality, our universal, age-old truth seems to be this: life is a lot. The point that I was going to make before this episode got away with me is that context matters. 2 things can look the same, appear the same, but it doesn't mean that it was used the same, or that it is the same, or always have been the same. Context matters.